The stars had never looked so silent. Alien Trove floated in the cockpit of the small human cargo tug, the Rutherford. As it drifted through the outer rim of the Alara sector, he leaned forward, checking the readings for the umpteenth time. The hum of the engines was comforting, almost meditative, and the faint pulse of the ship's life support filled the cabin with a rhythm that reminded him of his own heartbeat. Out here, in the emptiness between stars, small routines kept him sane. He glanced at the sensors. Nothing unusual. No meteor swarms. No rogue satellites. No cosmic radiation spikes. Just quiet. And yet, quiet was deceptive. A sudden jolt shook the Rutherford. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the control panel. Elian's stomach lurched as he gripped the console. What the? His voice was swallowed by the warning tones. The readings were all over the place. A dense meteor dust cascade was moving fast. Far faster than anything the Alara Space Authority had predicted. Elian's trained mind raced. Calculations ran through his head. Trajectory, impact points, shield integrity. The Rutherford wasn't designed for heavy debris. Its hull was thin, built for speed, and small cargo, not survival. Brace, he muttered to himself, though he knew it was too late. A blinding flash filled the cockpit. The ship shuddered violently. Instruments went dark, replaced only by the eerie, pulsating glow of residual power surging through exposed circuits. Then, silence. When Elian opened his eyes, the stars outside were blurred. The hull had taken a direct hit. Oxygen levels were dropping. A small, bitter wind of venting air brushed his face. He was alive, barely. But the Rutherford was dead in space, its engines fried and communications offline. Elian activated his emergency beacon. No signal. The moon ahead, a small, barren world, seemed like the only hope. Gravity wasn't much, but at least it would hold him still for now. He suited up, tested his thrusters, and slowly maneuvered toward the moon's surface. The landing was rough. More like a series of heavy bumps than a smooth touchdown. Dust and debris billowed around him as the ship skidded along jagged rocks, finally coming to a halt in a shallow crater. He exhaled a long, shaky breath. Alive. Yes, but stranded. Elian unclipped himself from the seat and crawled toward the cockpit's shattered viewport. And then, he saw it. A shadow moved in the crater nearby. Not human. Not anything he recognized from any database he had ever studied. Massive wings curled around a slender, elongated body. Smooth scales reflected the pale light of the moon, shimmering in colors that shifted with the angle. A head, as large as a small car, lifted slightly, revealing eyes that seemed intelligent, aware. Elian froze. His first instinct was caution, but as he watched, he noticed something strange. The creature wasn't moving normally. Its wings sagged, its tail twitched uselessly, and there was a long gash along its side. Something inside him, a quiet human stubbornness, said he couldn't just leave it here. "Are you hurt?" he asked, unsure if it could understand him. To his astonishment, the creature responded not with sound, but with a thought. Clear, deliberate, and unmistakable. "I cannot move. Help me." Elian blinked, stunned. He wasn't imagining this. The being's telepathic voice was calm, even polite, but there was urgency beneath it. Okay. I can help," he said aloud, more to himself than to it. He stumbled over to the ridge of rocks separating them, assessing the distance. It would be dangerous, he had no idea what the creature was capable of, but leaving it there was impossible. He approached slowly, hands visible, carrying his small toolkit. The creature watched him with an intensity that made him swallow hard. Then, with careful movements, it lowered its massive head closer to the ground, making itself as small and non-threatening as possible. Elian crouched beside it. The scales were surprisingly warm, almost soft in places. He checked the injury. There was a long tear along the creature's spine, and one of its limbs seemed paralyzed. It made a low, quivering sound, almost like a purr of discomfort. "Okay," Elian muttered. "First, let's see if we can stabilize you." He unpacked his small medkit. Bandages, nanogel, basic stimulators, all scavenged from his cargo runs. The creature's large eyes watched every movement. It didn't flinch when he touched the scales around the wound, though a shiver ran along its body. Hours passed. Elian worked carefully, improvising braces for its limbs and trying to construct a temporary neurostimulator from the damaged parts of the Rutherford. The creature's telepathic presence hummed around him, steady but faint. Occasionally, he felt it communicating small thoughts: curiosity, concern, patience. By the time the moon's first nightfall arrived, Elian had managed to rig a basic life support setup for the creature. He had also rigged a rudimentary shelter from the twisted metal of the Rutherford and the jagged rocks nearby. "Rest now," he said, finally allowing himself to sit back. The creature lowered its massive head beside him, its eyes softening as if it understood. Elian had survived long stretches in space alone before. He was used to solitude. But this was different. He wasn't alone in his isolation. There was someone or something here that depended on him, just as much as he would depend on it in the coming days. And yet, he knew the real challenge was just beginning. The moon was barren, cold, and exposed. Food and water supplies were minimal. Communication with the outside world was impossible until he could repair the damaged systems or find a way to reach orbit. And most importantly, the creature's injuries would not heal on their own. For now, all he could do was survive and care for it. Night on the moon stretched long and silent. The stars shimmered coldly above, indifferent to the struggles below. But in the small crater, amidst scraps of twisted metal and jagged rock, a human mechanic and a paralyzed alien dragon lay side by side, watching the same stars, sharing the same determination. Elian couldn't help smiling, despite the exhaustion. This was new. This was unexpected. And somehow, he knew that giving up was not an option. Not for him, and not for the creature that had trusted him so completely. He settled down beside the dragon, wrapping himself in a thermal blanket. The creature rested its massive head near him, small pulses of thought brushing against his mind, a quiet acknowledgement, almost a sigh of relief. Elian closed his eyes. Sleep was fitful, but it came, and as he drifted off, the reality of their situation sank in. Out here, in the endless silence, survival would require patience, ingenuity, and an unshakable will. He had all three. And somehow, he hoped that would be enough. Tomorrow, he would begin the real work, repairing the life support systems, finding resources, and figuring out how to communicate with the outside world. But tonight, all that mattered was the quiet companionship of a being unlike any he had ever known, and the unspoken promise that he would not abandon it, no matter how long it took to survive. Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, unchanging and vast. Below them, in a small, fragile crater on a distant moon, humanity's stubborn heart and alien grace had found each other. And that was enough. The morning sun of the barren moon crept slowly across the crater. Elian Trove stirred beneath his thermal blanket, the pale light illuminating the jagged metal and rock that had become his home. Beside him, the alien dragon shifted slightly, testing its limbs with cautious movements. The creature's wings twitched, and for a moment, Elian held his breath. Then a faint pulse of thought reached him, calm and deliberate. "Good morning," it said. Elian smiled. "Good morning. Sleep well?" "Better than expected," the dragon replied. "You have a careful touch." The dragon's words were not spoken aloud but transmitted through the gentle, resonating threads of telepathy. It was a strange, comforting sound in his mind, a mixture of intellect and curiosity, tinged with the patience of a species that had lived for centuries. Elian had learned to interpret these threads, understanding mood and intent, even if he didn't know the exact words. He unstrapped his pack and began preparing for the day. Their immediate priority was survival. The moon offered little in the way of sustenance: no natural water, no plants, no breathable air beyond their makeshift shelter. But there were resources: pieces of the Rutherford, minerals in the crater walls, and, most importantly, each other. Elian started by inspecting the dragon's temporary life support system. He had rigged a series of nutrient gels and simple oxygen tubes, enough to keep it alive, but far from comfortable. He carefully adjusted the flow rates, monitoring the dragon's responses. The creature watched him with immense patience, its large eyes tracking each movement with interest. "You are learning quickly," it said. "I have to," Elian replied. "You depend on me." There was a pause, then a soft pulse of approval. The dragon seemed to relax, the tension in its massive frame easing slightly. Elian exhaled. It was small progress, but in this place, every small victory counted. With the dragon stabilized for the moment, Elian turned his attention to the crashed ship. The Rutherford had been a lifeline, and now it was a pile of metal scraps. But he could salvage components: batteries, wires, circuit boards, and small tools. Everything could be repurposed. Over the next few hours, he worked tirelessly, carefully extracting what he could without damaging the fragile structure of the craft further. The dragon's attention never wavered. Though it could not move, it contributed in its own way. Every so often, it sent pulses of thought, guiding Elian's hands, suggesting more efficient ways to connect circuits, or advising on the placement of fragile components. Its knowledge of advanced alien technology was remarkable, and Elian began to realize that this partnership, strange as it was, could be far more powerful than he had initially imagined. By midday, Elian had constructed a small workshop using pieces of the ship's hull. He had also managed to rig a rudimentary heat system, powered by a combination of scavenged batteries and makeshift solar panels. It was crude, but it worked. The dragon observed silently, occasionally sending advice. "You are resourceful," it said at one point. Elian grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. The dragon's response was a quiet pulse of amusement. Perhaps both. As days turned into a week, Elian and the dragon settled into a rhythm. He prepared meals from the nutrient gels and scavenged supplies, while the dragon offered insights into energy management, structural reinforcement, and even small tricks to maintain the life support system more efficiently. The telepathic communication grew richer. Elian found himself thinking not just in terms of commands or instructions, but in conversation, imagining the dragon's mind as a partner, not just a patient. One afternoon, while examining a damaged sensor array from the Rutherford, Elian paused. "I've been thinking, maybe we can repair a communication system," he said, "even if it's just enough to send a simple distress signal." The dragon tilted its head. "It is possible," it said. "But the moon's crust interferes with most signals. We will need something beyond human design." Elian frowned. "Beyond human? Like what?" "I can guide you," the dragon replied. "But it will require patience and care. We must work together." Elian nodded. Patience was something he had plenty of. Care he could manage. And together, perhaps they could reach the stars again. The next few days were a blur of activity. Elian scavenged components, testing each one for potential use in a hybrid communication device. The dragon guided him in ways he could barely imagine: how to combine human circuitry with the principles of Kirathi bioenergetics, how to adjust power flows with subtle pulses of neural energy, and how to align the system for maximum resonance. Each night, they rested, and Elian felt a growing respect for this ancient, intelligent being. Its patience, its curiosity, and its unwavering calm were qualities he had rarely seen, even in humans. It was not all smooth. There were setbacks. Components failed. Connections burned out. Nights were long and frustrating, and the isolation pressed heavily against his spirits. But through it all, the dragon remained steady. It did not scold. It did not panic. It simply offered guidance, encouragement, and occasional dry humor transmitted directly into his mind. One evening, while tinkering with a small solar array, Elian paused to look at the dragon. The creature's eyes glowed softly in the dim light, reflecting the faint reds and blues of the workbench. He felt a pang of connection, a recognition of mutual reliance. "You know," he said quietly, "if anyone told me a human mechanic and an alien dragon would be stuck together on a moon, I'd have laughed." The dragon's thought came gently, almost with a smile. Yet here we are. For the first time, Elian felt a strange warmth in the loneliness of the barren moon. It was the warmth of companionship, of shared purpose, and of trust. Trust that had been built slowly, through patience and care, not through words alone. By the end of the second week, they had made progress on the communication device. It was crude, a patchwork of human engineering and Kirathi biotech, but functional in theory. Elian held his breath as he powered it on for the first time, the circuits glowing faintly, the small hum of energy filling the shelter. The dragon sent a pulse of approval, subtle but unmistakable. "We are ready to test," it said. Elian nodded. "Tomorrow," he replied. "We'll wait for the optimal conditions. Right now, we rest." Night fell again, and the moon's silence wrapped around them. Elian lay beside the dragon, listening to the soft pulses of its presence. He thought about the long months ahead, the challenges yet to come, and the uncertainty of rescue. But for the first time, he felt certain about one thing. He would not abandon this creature, no matter how long it took to survive. And the dragon, though paralyzed and silent to the eyes of the world, seemed to share that certainty. They slept through the quiet hours, two beings bound not by necessity alone but by a growing, unspoken partnership. Outside, the stars continued their slow, eternal drift, indifferent to the struggles below. Inside the small crater, amidst scraps of metal and jagged rock, human ingenuity and alien wisdom were combining in ways neither could have achieved alone. It was a fragile beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. The next morning, Elian awoke with renewed determination. The sun cast long shadows across the jagged metal and dust of the crater, highlighting the small workshop and the dragon lying beside him. He stretched, preparing for another long day of work. "Ready?" he asked. "Always," the dragon replied. And together, they began another day. Each step bringing them closer to survival, closer to rescue, and closer to an unbreakable bond between human and dragon in the quiet expanse of space. Days melted into weeks, and weeks into months. The barren moon, once an alien, hostile landscape, began to feel like home to Elian Trove. The crater, with its jagged rocks and the remnants of the Rutherford, had transformed into a small haven of survival and ingenuity. Elian had become skilled at stretching his limited resources. He had learned to ration nutrient gels, collect moisture from the thin atmosphere, and generate power from scavenged solar panels. Every small task required thought, patience, and care. And every task was shared with the dragon, who, despite being paralyzed, contributed through quiet guidance, subtle telepathic pulses, and an unyielding presence that reminded Elian he was not alone. The dragon, whom Elian had started calling Saraith, seemed to enjoy observing him at work. Its massive, luminescent eyes would follow each movement, offering approval, curiosity, or advice in silent pulses of thought. Elian had learned to interpret these communications with surprising accuracy. It was not language as humans knew it, but understanding flowed through them like a current, connecting mind to mind. One morning, Elian worked on the hybrid communication device. The device had been a frustrating project, a complex puzzle of human circuits fused with Kirathi biotech, capable of sending a signal strong enough to pierce the moon's interference, but only under precise conditions. He adjusted the power flow through the piezo crystals he had salvaged from the Rutherford's broken sensors. A misalignment could overload the circuits. A miscalculation could destroy their only hope of calling for help. "You need to stabilize the resonance before increasing the power," Saraith's pulse suggested, calm and deliberate. Elian nodded, following the instructions with careful hands. He had grown accustomed to the dragon's guidance. Its patience, its precise understanding of energy systems far beyond human knowledge, and its quiet confidence had become invaluable. Days passed with small victories and occasional setbacks. The communication device hummed and glowed in intermittent bursts, signaling progress. Each failure taught them something new. Each small success strengthened the bond between the human mechanic and the alien dragon. Despite the intense focus on survival, Elian and Saharaith began to share moments of reflection. They spoke through thought and occasional speech about their worlds, their cultures, and their histories. Elian described life on Earth: cities, oceans, storms, and sunlight on green fields. He told of human ingenuity, curiosity, and stubbornness, of how people built machines that could fly, dive deep into oceans, and explore other planets. Sarath, in return, shared the wonders of Kirathi civilization. Cities that floated above clouds on currents of magnetic wind, buildings grown from living crystals, and a philosophy that valued harmony, patience, and shared wisdom. The dragon's stories were vivid, painting images in Elian's mind that words alone could not capture. "Humans are very persistent," Saharth mused one day. "Even when the situation seems hopeless, you find a way." Elian smiled. "Persistence keeps us alive. And stubbornness makes things interesting." They laughed together in their own way, sharing the quiet joy of companionship. It was remarkable, Elian thought, that two beings from worlds so different could find understanding and friendship here, in isolation. One afternoon, Elian decided to explore the surrounding crater edges. There were mineral ridges and strange crystalline formations that caught the sunlight in unusual patterns. Perhaps, he thought, there was something here that could help their communication device. Saharaith guided him from within, sending subtle pulses to indicate stability, hidden dangers, and optimal ways to climb the rocky terrain. The crystals were remarkable. When Elian touched them, he felt a faint resonance, a subtle vibration that seemed to respond to energy. Saharaith explained that the crystals were piezoelectric, capable of amplifying signals if used correctly. Elian's heart raced with excitement. Perhaps this was the breakthrough they needed. Over the next several days, Elian carefully integrated the crystals into the hybrid communication system. He followed Saraith's instructions meticulously, aligning circuits and biocomponents, testing small pulses of energy, adjusting frequencies. The process required patience and focus, and every evening, they rested together in their small shelter, tired but hopeful. Despite the long months, neither felt the monotony of isolation as oppressive. Each day had purpose, each problem was a puzzle, and each small success was a shared victory. Saharaith's presence was a constant reminder that they were not merely surviving, they were learning, innovating, and growing together. Elian also began noticing subtle changes in Saraith. Even in paralysis, the dragon's mind was active, curious, and expressive. Sometimes it would nudge thoughts of amusement, sometimes gentle encouragement, and sometimes deep, philosophical reflections about life, survival, and hope. Elian found comfort in these mental exchanges, feeling a sense of partnership he had never experienced with any human. The moon's nights were long and silent, but in their little crater, light and warmth persisted. Elian rigged small lamps from broken hull panels and energy cells, casting a soft glow across the workshop. Saraith would hum faintly in resonance, a gentle vibration that seemed to harmonize with the energy systems. Elian often rested his hand on the dragon's scales, feeling a pulse of life, a rhythm that connected them both. One evening, as the dim light flickered across the crystalline formations, Elian spoke softly. "Do you think we'll ever leave this moon?" Saraith's pulse was slow, thoughtful. The certainty in the dragon's response gave Elian strength. Months of isolation had been challenging, but they had built something extraordinary: trust, understanding, and a shared purpose. He knew that whatever came next, rescue, repair, or journey, they would face it together. By the second month, the hybrid communication device was near completion. The final test required precise timing and energy alignment. Even the slightest mistake could render the entire system useless. Elian and Saraith worked side by side, or rather, side by mind, aligning circuits, calibrating biocomponents, and testing resonance patterns. The air hummed with anticipation, the faint glow of the crystals illuminating their concentrated expressions. Finally, after hours of delicate adjustments, Elian activated the device. A soft pulse of energy radiated from the crystals, spreading across the crater and beyond. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, faintly at first, and then with growing clarity, a response signal returned from orbit, a small acknowledgement, but unmistakable. Elian's eyes widened. "We did it." Saraith's pulse of thought was calm, yet tinged with satisfaction. It was more than just a signal. It was proof of what they had accomplished together, a testament to human ingenuity and determination, and to the quiet wisdom of a species far older than Earth. Elian allowed himself a moment to revel in the achievement. The months of labor, the setbacks, the long silent nights, they had all led to this moment, and he knew there would be more challenges ahead. Rescue would not come immediately. Energy supplies were still limited, and Saraith's full recovery would require advanced care. But for now, they had hope. And hope, Elian realized, was far more powerful than despair. As night fell over the moon, Elian and Saraith settled in their shelter. The stars above were silent witnesses to their small victory, shining indifferently, yet somehow encouraging. They had survived, adapted, and triumphed in their own way, not through violence or force, but through patience, intelligence, and mutual respect. Elian glanced at the dragon. "We'll keep going, no matter how long it takes." "I know," Saraith replied, a quiet certainty in its mind. "And I will endure with you." The human mechanic and the alien dragon lay together in the fragile warmth of their shelter, companions bound by circumstance, purpose, and trust. Outside, the barren moon stretched endlessly, indifferent and unforgiving. Inside, two minds shared determination, creativity, and the quiet, unshakable bond that had grown between them over silent months. They slept, dreamless yet content, for tomorrow would bring more work, more discoveries, and the continuing journey of survival and partnership. And neither of them feared the long months ahead, for they had each other. The morning light crept over the jagged edges of the crater, casting long shadows across the workshop that Elian had built from scraps of the Rutherford and the moon's natural rock. Today was important. After months of trial and error, painstaking patience, and countless sleepless nights, the hybrid communication device was finally ready for the final phase. Elian packed the device carefully, carrying it toward the crystalline ridges that glimmered like frozen fire beneath the weak sunlight. The crystals here were unique, large, multifaceted, and semi-transparent. Saraith's guidance had been clear. The device would achieve maximum resonance only when placed among these formations, aligned with the natural vibration of the crystals. "Careful with your footing," Saraith said, its voice a calm pulse in his mind. "The ridges are brittle. One misstep could collapse a segment and damage the crystals." Elian nodded, gripping the device tightly as he navigated the narrow paths. The crystals emitted a faint hum as he approached, a soft, almost musical vibration that resonated with the hybrid system in his pack. He felt the subtle energy brushing against his hands, his arms, even his thoughts. And he realized the dragon had been right. The crystals could amplify their signal if properly aligned. Saraith guided him with precision. "Place the device here. Adjust the alignment to the natural axis of the crystals. The resonance will follow." He followed the instructions meticulously, adjusting tiny dials, bending delicate wires, and positioning the device so that its energy circuits were perfectly parallel to the crystal faces. Sweat dripped from his forehead, but his hands were steady. He had learned to trust Saraith's guidance completely. Every pulse, every thought from the dragon was perfectly timed, perfectly calculated. "Almost there," Saraith said, its massive eyes gleaming faintly even in the dim light. "Power flow must be gradual. Too fast, and the circuits may overload." Elian took a deep breath and started the energy transfer slowly, watching the hybrid system respond. At first, there was a low hum, almost imperceptible. Then the crystals began to glow faintly, their colors shifting with the frequency of the device's signal. The air seemed to vibrate slightly around them, a gentle resonance that reminded Elian of music. "Good. Steady," Saraith encouraged, and Elian could feel its approval pulsing through his mind. Hours passed as he fine-tuned the device, adjusting alignment, recalibrating power, and monitoring the resonance patterns. Every so often, he would pause, glance at Saraith, and receive a subtle pulse of reassurance. Though the dragon could not move its limbs, its presence was stronger than any human companion could ever be. Its guidance, its knowledge, and its unwavering patience were invaluable. Finally, the device reached full resonance. A soft, harmonious hum filled the ridge, and Elian felt a surge of hope. This was it, the breakthrough. A signal strong enough to reach orbit, enough to attract attention from nearby human or Kirathi spacecraft. "We did it," he whispered, though the words felt small in the vastness of the moon. Saharaith's mental pulse was calm but unmistakably proud. "Indeed, your persistence and skill have brought us here." Elian smiled. It was a simple, human gesture, but it felt important. Months of struggle, isolation, and painstaking effort had led to this moment, and they had done it together. But there was still work to do. The signal could only be sent at the right moment, when the moon's rotation, the storm cycles, and the crystalline resonance all aligned perfectly. Elian began calculating, using makeshift charts and measurements. Saraith contributed by sending subtle pulses that guided his calculations, predicting interference patterns and adjusting frequencies in real time. The next few days were a careful dance of preparation. Elian maintained the device, repaired minor issues, and tested small signal bursts. Each test brought small successes, but the final alignment remained elusive. The moon's electromagnetic interference and shifting crystal vibrations made the timing critical. A mistake could ruin months of work. Through it all, Saraith remained patient, offering guidance without criticism. Its telepathic presence was a constant comfort, a reminder that they were partners, not just caretaker and patient. Elian found himself speaking aloud more often now, not because the dragon needed to hear him, but because sharing his thoughts made the long days less lonely. One evening, as the weak moonlight reflected off the crystals, Elian sat beside Saraith. "Do you think anyone will come for us?" he asked softly. "They will," the dragon replied, calm and certain. "Our signal will be noticed. You have done everything necessary." Elian nodded, feeling a quiet reassurance. He knew the dragon was right. The device was ready. All that remained was timing and patience. The following day, Elian began the final preparations. He checked every wire, every circuit, every delicate biocomponent, integrated into the system. He positioned the device in the optimal location among the crystals, aligning the axes with precision. He adjusted the power flow gradually, monitoring the resonance patterns. Sareth's pulses guided him through every step. Subtle, but critical, correcting minor misalignments before they could become problems. Finally, the moment arrived. The device hummed with a steady, harmonious energy. Elian activated the signal at precisely the right moment, as the moon rotated into alignment with orbiting relay satellites. The crystals amplified the resonance perfectly, sending a powerful, steady signal into space. They waited. Seconds stretched into minutes, the quiet hum of the device filling the air. Then, faintly at first, and then with growing clarity, a response signal returned from orbit. Elian's heart leapt. It was brief, but unmistakable. A recognition, an acknowledgement, that rescue teams were on their way. "We did it," Elian whispered again, this time with a laugh of relief. Sareth's pulse was calm but approving. "Indeed, and we will survive this together." The weeks of preparation, the countless hours of work, the long nights of frustration and careful problem-solving, it had all led to this single moment of triumph. And yet, Elian knew the real test was still ahead, ensuring they could survive until rescue arrived. Supplies were limited, and Sareth still could not move. But hope had returned, and hope was powerful. That night, as they rested beside the glowing crystals, Elian felt a sense of accomplishment and deep gratitude. The dragon's trust, patience, and guidance had been as vital as his own hands and knowledge. Together, they had achieved something neither could have accomplished alone. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we wait. And then we leave this moon together." "Tomorrow?" "Yes," Sareth agreed. "Together." The stars above twinkled silently. Indifferent, yet eternal. Below them, on a small, barren moon, a human mechanic and an alien dragon had found a way to triumph over isolation, over limitation, and over uncertainty, not through strength or violence, but through patience, ingenuity, and mutual trust. Elian closed his eyes, feeling the gentle pulse of Sareth's presence beside him. They had survived months of silence and hardship. Now, rescue was on the horizon, and the partnership they had built would carry them forward. Beyond the moon, into the unknown. It was a small victory, but in their quiet corner of the universe, it felt immense, and both human and dragon knew that together, nothing, not distance, not isolation, not time, could break the bond they had forged. The morning sun cast its pale light over the crystalline ridges, glimmering across the small workshop that Elian had built from scraps of the Rutherford. For months, he had labored tirelessly, guided by the calm, steady presence of Sareth. Now, finally, the hybrid communication device had worked, and a response signal from orbit confirmed that help was on its way. Elian felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. Rescue would arrive soon, but they were still isolated, and the supplies in the crater were limited. He checked the life support systems one last time, ensuring that oxygen levels were steady and that Sareth's improvised braces and stimulators were functioning properly. The dragon's massive eyes followed him, bright with intelligence and patience. "You've done all you could," Sareth said in a quiet, thoughtful pulse through their telepathic connection. "The rest is beyond your hands." Elian smiled. "And yet, I won't relax until I know you're safe." Hours passed, and the wait stretched. Each time a shadow passed across the ridges, or a distant signal flickered in the sky, Elian's heart leapt. Finally, a faint shimmer in the upper atmosphere caught his attention. A small fleet of rescue ships, human and Kirathi alike, appeared on the horizon. Their sleek hulls glinted in the sunlight as they descended toward the crater. Elian's pulse quickened. "They're here," he thought, trying to control the nervous excitement in his chest. Sahraith's presence beside him was calm, but Elian could feel the subtle tension in the dragon's telepathic pulse. This was the moment they had prepared for. The moment that would test everything they had accomplished together. The first rescue vessel landed with delicate precision on the outer rim of the crater. A ramp extended, and figures began to emerge, humans in protective suits, and Kirathi engineers with equipment designed to handle fragile biotech. Elian took a deep breath, then sent a pulse to Sareth. "We're not alone anymore. Everything is going to be okay." Sareth's response was soft, almost a sigh. "I know. Very well." The humans approached cautiously, scanning the area and the hybrid communication device. They glanced at Elian, then at Sareth. One of the engineers, a tall human with a calm demeanor, knelt beside him. "You're Elian Trove?" she asked. "Yes," he replied, stepping forward. "And this is Sahraith. She's been paralyzed since the crash." The Kirathi engineers moved carefully, their hands delicate even though their species were far larger than humans. They examined the dragon's braces and stimulators, nodding in approval at the ingenuity. Sahraith remained still, watching the newcomers with measured curiosity, while Elian explained how he had managed the months of survival. The engineers exchanged glances, then worked together to transfer Sahraith to a more stable support system for transport. Elian helped, careful to follow their instructions. The dragon's massive form was lifted gently, supported by technology designed to keep her comfortable and safe. Though immobilized, Sahraith sent a pulse of reassurance to Elian. "Do not worry. I am fine." Elian smiled faintly. "I'll be right there with you." Once Sahraith was secure, the team invited Elian aboard one of the human ships. The small vessel's cabin was surprisingly comfortable, with controls and instruments far beyond the makeshift systems he had relied upon. He sank into a seat, exhaustion pressing down on him. For months, he had lived with minimal sleep and constant work. Now, for the first time, he allowed himself to relax, even if only slightly. As the fleet ascended into orbit, Elian looked down at the barren moon, glimmering with its crystalline ridges. He thought about the months they had spent here, the trials, the ingenuity, the trust that had grown between a human and an alien dragon. Their survival had not depended on strength or violence, it had depended on patience, creativity, and an unshakable sense of loyalty. Sahraith, now stabilized in a specialized support pod, sent a gentle pulse of thought. "You have proven yourself worthy of trust." Elian felt a warm pride in his chest. "And you've proven that wisdom comes in forms I never imagined," he replied softly. The rescue journey back to the nearest Kirathi Human Alliance station was smooth. Along the way, Elian began discussing potential improvements for life support systems and hybrid technologies, combining human engineering with Kirathi biotech. Sahraith responded to his suggestions, offering insights and subtle corrections that only a species with centuries of experience could provide. It was a continuation of their partnership, now elevated to a level of shared purpose and vision. Upon arrival, the station's medical teams immediately took Sahraith for treatment. Elian watched as advanced Kirathi bio-repair systems began restoring her neural pathways. The massive dragon, who had been immobilized for months, slowly began to regain control of her limbs. Even as she lay in the sophisticated medical cradle, her eyes found Elian's, and he felt the familiar pulse of reassurance. "You did not abandon me," she conveyed. "I would never," he replied, smiling. "Not for anyone, not for any reason." The head engineer approached Elian afterward, a human woman with a kind smile. "Your dedication is remarkable. Not many humans would have stayed with a being of this size and intellect through months of isolation." Elian shrugged, I didn't think of it as remarkable. I thought of it as necessary. She trusted me. I couldn't do otherwise. The engineer nodded, understanding. And that trust has not gone unnoticed. Both human and Kirathi authorities are impressed by your ingenuity, your patience, and your loyalty. You may not realize it, but you've set a precedent for interspecies cooperation. Elian felt a quiet pride, but more than that, a profound relief. Months of isolation, endless nights of work, and constant uncertainty had all led to this moment. He had survived, Sahraith had survived, and together they had proven that patience, intelligence, and compassion could overcome the harshest of circumstances. Days passed, and Sahraith's recovery progressed rapidly. The advanced Kirathi systems repaired the neural damage that had paralyzed her, and soon she could move again, flexing wings and limbs with a cautious, deliberate grace. When she finally stood fully, towering over the human crew, her eyes sought Elian's. "You stayed," she conveyed. "You did not abandon me." "And I never will," Elian replied, his voice steady. The story of their survival, human mechanic and alien dragon, stranded for months on a barren moon, spread across both human and Kirathi communities. It became a symbol of interspecies cooperation. A tale not of battle or conquest, but of ingenuity, patience, and trust. Children on Earth and in Kirathi cities learned about the human who refused to leave and the dragon who trusted him completely. Weeks later, Sahraith approached Elian with an unexpected offer. Her telepathic pulse carried a quiet, persuasive energy. "Join the new Cooperative Engineering Corps. Human and Kirathi engineers will work together to design technologies that neither species could accomplish alone." Elian's heart leapt. You want me to come with you?" "Yes," she conveyed. "Your skill, creativity, and loyalty have proven invaluable. Together, we can accomplish much more than either of us could alone." Elian looked at the dragon he had cared for, the being who had taught him more than any human mentor ever could. He felt a surge of purpose. "Then I'll come," he said firmly. Together. Sahraith's massive wings stretched gracefully, a symbol of renewed strength and freedom. "Together," she confirmed. The final day on the station was quiet, but filled with anticipation. Elian and Sahraith walked side by side, not as mechanic and patient, but as partners, friends, and pioneers. The humans and Kirathi staff watched with admiration, inspired by the simple truth that loyalty, patience, and intelligence could achieve miracles even in the harshest conditions. As the transport ship prepared for departure to the Cooperative Engineering Corps headquarters, Elian glanced back at the barren moon that had tested them both so profoundly. It no longer seemed desolate. Instead, it stood as a monument to ingenuity, endurance, and trust. They had survived months of isolation, learned to rely on one another, and created a bond that could not be broken. Sahraith turned her massive head toward him, sending a final pulse of gratitude and encouragement. "We have changed more than just our own fate. We have changed how humans and Kirathi can work together." Elian smiled. "Then let's make sure the rest of the galaxy knows it too." The ship lifted smoothly into orbit, carrying them away from the moon and toward a future filled with discovery, collaboration, and adventure. Together, human and dragon, mechanic and ancient wisdom, would explore the possibilities of shared ingenuity. Their story was a quiet legend of resilience, trust, and the boundless potential of partnership. A reminder that courage was not always about conflict, but about staying true to one another in the face of uncertainty. The stars stretched endlessly above them, vast and eternal. Yet now the galaxy seemed smaller, more welcoming, because two unlikely companions had proven that together, even the impossible could be achieved. And in the hum of the ship, in the gentle pulse of Sahraith's presence beside him, Elian knew that they were only beginning. Together, he thought, smiling. Always together.